Most people, when they talk, they usually talk of or to the persona, not to the being themselves. That is why many people usually end up having so superficial experiences and, well, so superficial existences. Why? Because, well, as I've been saying in previous videos, people kind of feel something like they are an accumulation, they identify themselves with that accumulation, and then what happens is that, well, they live their life as if that accumulation is themselves and just that. Why this is important is because people always end up classifying things. It's how the mind works, and the problem is people identify with these classifications. As I've said, the mind only provides, well, cover, let's say, or comfort to those who feed it the most. That is why so many people revel in explanations, in classifications, because this knowledge, though created by us, and therefore it's not necessarily real but more like experiential, we end up having a certain sense of power. But all this classification only creates false layers, right? Now, those layers are not necessarily entirely false because they are based on our perception. Like when someone tastes something, right? For example, if we taste salt, in our experience, right? Of course, salt is, as we call, salty, right? It doesn't have much of a good taste in a way because, well, that's how we perceive it. But when you use it in quantities in foods, of course, salt is highly critical. But the point about this is everything is part of our own experiential field. So the point is, when we identify with something, we identify with some perceptions of something. Now, what is a persona? Again, a persona is a mask, coming from the Latin word persona, well, which means basically a mask. This mask would be equipped, right? It would be used by actors and actresses in medieval times to portray different characters, usually the more difficult characters that would be portrayable, right? Gods, goddesses, elemental figures, right? Happenings, right? Like more abstract concepts. So basically, a persona is nothing else than a mask, right? Now, this mask, many people unfortunately identify themselves with. And, well, when people identify with themselves with a mask, they embrace what I call the comfort field. Now, what is the comfort field? Well, a comfort field is when certain people meet and they start talking, and, each and every one person would like to be perceived in a certain way. And since this is highly common, people kind of accept that this person is in a certain way, so I have to, pretend and play their game and be like that. A person is in another way, so they kind of end up being the way they want to be portrayed. And when they meet someone like me, or people who can read easier through their layers of misconceptions and, well, through a lot of layers of identification, they become a bit uneasy because, well, they are reminded that they are not the superheroes, supervillains, characters, flaws, or whatever they think they are in their life. Because, well, we kind of have to understand that many people kind of end up feeling that they are losers. Now, this is not the bad part. The bad part is when one identifies themselves with something, the intellect, or a part within us that strongly supports or fanatically supports that which we end up believing in, that part, well, ends up having people, relentlessly and recklessly fight for it. So we have people who fanatically fight for the belief that they suck and that they are useless. And you fight for those, and you're almost even capable of killing for the point that you are useless because, well, that's what society kind of drills into your head. Whatever there is definitely not for you. You're definitely not good enough. You're not gonna achieve this. You're not gonna achieve that. You're not gonna, well, basically you don't even know why you're living because you're basically a failure of nature. Or, well, that's kind of what most people understand. So they need a lot of distractions. And of course, in medieval times, when there was so much anguish and pain, and there weren't distractions, people kind of had to create their own distractions. And uh, well, religion is not necessarily a good distraction because you have some songs, some things that you can think of. You have one deity in the case of Christianity that you can think of, right? But there isn't much distraction. So you have greater ones like philosophy and, well, let's say psychology or painting and the such. So you dive into your own pains through that. And then you have sciences, right? You classify all sorts of things because you want to have a big delve, right, into these ideas, into sorting things, into as minute details as possible, so that you have finally a sense that you know some things, and basically you want to justify in a certain way, which is kind of false, that you basically know things and you are basically capable of something. But what this classification does, it's nothing else than a gathering of ideas, a gathering of concepts that surround the life that is regarding that existence, that being. So when someone thinks of a horse, they think of a shape, they think of certain sounds that a horse makes, and, well, let's say of a certain behavior, certain colors, right? When we think of a certain species, it's exactly the same thing when people think, let's say, about a person, right? You think about a person, about what you think what you believe about that person, right? One or two behavioral features, this and that, but you don't know their pains, you don't know their internal struggles, you don't know much of that in many cases. That is why I very rarely call people as friends, because what I call as a friend is someone who can read deep within you, and, well, they can realize certain things without you even knowing them, and at the right time they will tell you something that will probably shake your whole reality apart. So, many people say that, a hug is intimate, but in a hug, basically, people just, two bodies stay one near the other. Now, two rocks, if they stay one near the other, well, that's not necessarily intimate, but if you can read the energy readings of the rock, right, you can read its molecular structure, that's a bit more intimate, one may say, right? When you dissect something and you go deep within its premises, that's a lot more intimate, right? The same thing, you can dissect a personality, right? That's what psychiatrists do, and also, profilers and the such. When you seek deep into a person and see the traumas that deal with those, reactions that they have, now the point is you're finally becoming a bit more intimate regarding that person, right? Same is, let's say, in spirituality, when there are the spiritual healers, right? They teach people how to go in their own past and heal some of their wounds, right? And they might get some assistance. So this, in a way, is a sort of, well, let's say, lower level intimacy. And that is why I was saying people speak of the persona and to the persona, right? When you take a scientist and you present them a tree, they will look at the leaves, they will see the height, they will try to figure out the age. You see, that's how the mind works. They will focus on all the details, right? All the accumulations and details and, classifications that they have invented and, that they are using as a distraction to run away from the responsibility. And the responsibility that you have is exactly that which you lack right now, because the responsibility is to see the life in everything. That's how you grow awareness, and that's how you grow sensitivity. But the point is, they will always see all the details and characteristics that don't serve you anything in the end. Why? Well, mainly because they're just perceptions. And, well, it's no problem to create classifications as long as you're not using them as distractions, right? Distractions from who you are, from your own perceptions, and from your own self-improvement, right? To speak about this pleonastically. Now, the point about this is, if you continue with this, you're going to dive into greater layers of madness, because when you use so much classification as a means of distraction, well, the problem is you will end up believing, and again, belief means accepting things without a necessity for proof, you will end up believing that that is basically the whole truth and the whole existence. But in this kind of truth, you will always miss that which is the most important, right? You won't see the being that lies before you, right? The human, let's say, that lies in front of you. You will just think about the properties, let's say, that they have. Just like in programming, you dissect a certain object based on the properties and methods and or functions, whatever they're called, that they have, right? They have properties, right? And they have, they have, well, let's say there are other classifications, but again, they're not important for the purpose of this video. But again, people speak of the persona and to the persona, because that is why so many people suffer and remain stuck in this idea of, superficiality, right? Because they embrace gladly this accumulation, believing that that is the most that can be achieved. And this is a way that they show that they are ignorant, and they don't want to, they fight development, right? They fight evolution in the end. They fight improvement, because that's what ignorance is. It is death. You fight against change, which ultimately change is the only constant in this world. If you fight change, you're only going to be swept away, because change doesn't wait for anyone. You'll probably have warning shots that will tell you that certain things will be different, but people prefer remaining stuck. And that's why I'm saying that everything is kind of superficial. Ignorance is bliss, they say, but whose bliss is that? Because, well, I've never seen happy ignorance. Yes, ignorance provides a strength, or a certain illusion of strength, that you don't feel your own pains, you don't feel other people's pains, but it doesn't mean that it's not there, right? It doesn't mean that it is not there. So ignorance is bliss, but only to those who rule the ignorance, right? So if your ignorance is not a bliss, well, it's definitely a curse, and it is actually the greatest curse. Now, the problem is when you speak of a personality or to a personality, well, again, that is a little problematic, because you don't feel, or you don't even correlate to the being themselves, right? You speak of their own properties, right? That is why so many people fail to feel the deeper aspects of a certain person and only identify with their body, right? Like, that person is ugly, that person is not pleasant, that person likes behaving like that, and they don't find pleasure in that. So that is one of the reasons why people end up, as slaves of their egos, right? First of all, they only focus on the features. They don't focus on the being, right? They only focus on the exterior, namely on what their domineering impulses, right, ask of them. Because in the end, your impulses can only rule over you, and you can only be a slave of your own impulses, right? And through that, you might want to turn others into your slaves, but ultimately they become slaves of their own, because their impulses might have them, cede to their own, right? Like, some people really love being, slavish in a way. And, because that's how they are the masters in the end. They expect others to do things and to give them the signals, right? They are just like machines. Machines will always be the masters, because they always wait for input. They won't do anything without you giving them an input. So in the end, the question is, are they kind of masters all in a way? That's a good idea for a different video. Of course, they are not masters, because they don't have an awareness, right? But people who know how to be slaves in a somewhat aware way, well, they will always end up being the masters. I already spoke about this, because they are the one who give the shots, right? They are the one who take the initiative, but they use different covers, like, a certain sense of submission. Now, this submission is always gonna be used as a sign of running away from responsibility, because people don't want to do things in life. They want others to fix their problems. They want others to fix something. And well, they want problem solvers, but if you don't teach them how to solve themselves, they will keep causing problems. Couple this with people who suffer from attention problems, and they will cause problems just for the sake of other people coming into their life and solving them, right? And they will do this again and again and again because they don't have problems. They just have one problem, which is attention deficit, right? They will do everything possible to draw even more attention. So the point is, people who are superficial will always speak to you based on what they feel or what they perceive about you, right? So that is why I'm saying in this video, people usually refer to the persona, right? They speak of the persona or to the persona, right? They address you with a name. The name is another property that you have acquired. It is just an accumulation. The name is not you, the name is not even yours. You haven't created it, so it's definitely not yours. It is applied to you as a new property, right? But ultimately, it is not yours, right? Just like the clothes you have. It is a collective agreement that those clothes are yours, right? When you go to the market and you purchase them and such, it's just a collective agreement that those money are important, and the things that we purchase are important, right? But they can be taken anytime. Again, we have also invented the idea of robbery and such, and punishing robbery, but ultimately nothing physical in this world is ours, because ultimately we won't be taking any of it with us. I'm not saying one shouldn't live life in joy or in happiness or in riches, but not forgetting that we are beyond this accumulation of a persona or several personas, and beyond physicality. If one does not realize that, suffering will be their only ally. Suffering will be like their shadow. All this being said, you are appreciated. Take care. Ferenc Board signing out.